You're listening to the Wedding Biz Network, the voice of the creative entrepreneur. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner with The Wedding Biz, in which I conduct in-depth and revealing interviews of icons and those who I feel are the next generation icons of the weddings and event industry, all to provide you with education and inspiration. If you missed last week's episode, it was with Jess Levin-Conroy, founder and CEO of Carrots and Cake, and that was a dynamic interview. Be sure to check it out if you missed it. Today's special guest has been on the show several times, and that is Christina Matteucci, Executive Director of David Beahm Destination. Christina has been on the show several times, and you can go to theweddingbiz.com and search her name in the upper right corner in the search field to find those past episodes. For today's conversation, we discussed the generational gap in the event industry and what we can do to not only bridge that gap, but also how we can thrive even more in our careers by understanding more about this interesting topic. So enjoy this conversation with Christina Matteucci. Christina, I am so happy to be able to see you again in person in your office.
I'm so excited you're here.
Oh, thanks. I love having you on the show. I mean, everyone's got to listen to the episodes I mentioned in the intro, have to listen to. It's hard to believe I was here like during the pandemic. Somehow we worked it out.
It's wild, but I wanted to see you. I wanted to do this. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Thanks.
And I'm glad that we're on the other side of the pandemic and you're back.
Oh, yes, I know. I know. It's so great. Well, I know I read this incredible article that you wrote last spring for Special Events called X Marks the Spot, A Forgotten Generation's Plea to the Hospitality Industry, which was about the generational divide within our industry and issues connected, which we're going to get into. What compelled you to write that story?
I'm a huge fan of documentaries. And if you have seen any of my other talks, you know that a lot
your TEDx,
a lot of my other talks come from being inspired by documentarian work.
Huh. All right. I didn't know that.
And I was watching a documentary about the blue zones. Are you aware of what the blue zones are?
I'm not sure what that is.
Okay.
No.
So the blue zones are areas of the world where people live, the percentage of people who live over the age of 100 is significantly higher than anywhere else in the world. So there's an area in California.
Oh, California.
Japan.
Yeah.
There's an area in Italy. There's an area in Greece. And these particular areas all have several things in common. There's a lot of things that the scientists believe cause people to live to be 100 or longer or older.
Okay.
So one of them is a shared faith. One of them is the diet that they eat.
That's not a surprise.
But at the basis of it all was a multi-generational society and an enduring tribe of friends. And as I started to look at that, and I started to think about that in relationship to business, I thought that same formula can be applied to what we are doing right now in offices, not only in the event world, but across the entire corporate landscape. So I have seen and been dismayed, quite honestly, by the divide that I see within our industry. It seems like the boomers are on one side and the millennials and the Zoomers are on the other side. And the Xers, of which there are a few of us, sort of sit in the middle. And my thought, as I'm watching this documentary on the Blue Zone and how longevity is assured by mixing generations, why aren't we doing the same thing in our industry?
This makes so much sense.
Why aren't we talking amongst each other? Why aren't we sharing in the knowledge? Because what I was noticing in the industry, and it became incredibly clear during COVID, we were all isolated because of quarantine, but there were lots of conversations happening. And what was fascinating to note is that those conversations were happening amongst age groups. So all of the boomers and the Xers would hit up Zoom and get onto Zooms together.
Right.
And all of the millennials and Zoomers were over on Clubhouse.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Do you remember Clubhouse? The moment
I
that
was
Clubhouse.
so big into it. Now
The moment that was Clubhouse.
Right.
But they weren't talking amongst each other. We were seeking comfort and dialogue within our own groups. And research shows that when you have more blending across these generational divides, it is only beneficial to an office environment. Turnover goes down, collaboration goes up, productivity goes up. These percentages change. And in a post-COVID landscape where we're faced with the Great Resignation, those things matter. Those things really matter. So how do we foster that collaboration and how do we make that happen?
Yeah. Okay. And before we go there, it's interesting. So when the pandemic happened and there was this, real feeling of isolation and loneliness and, oh my God, what the hell did we do? It's like, yeah, it's interesting. I did first reach out to my own kind of generation of people.
Yeah.
And then it's because of the podcast, that I was getting into all the other generations and getting so much out of it.
And probably if you
different
think
perspectives.
Back, who was the one that told you about Clubhouse? I would guarantee you it would be a millennial or a Zoomer.
Oh, of course.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And that kind of conversation wasn't happening cross-generationally at all. I mean, I think for the most part, you'd hop onto Clubhouse and very infrequently would you find Gen Xers or above.
Well, so before that transition point that you're talking about, previous to the pandemic, when you look back now with hindsight, you see that there was a divide?
Hugely. Yes. And it's even you can even look at it across, go to your next cocktail networking event.
And look at how they all group together. Yeah.
Look across the room.
You're absolutely right.
And
you're right.
Yeah. And I think, and it's hard. I want to say that it's hard. It's hard to branch out when you feel that you don't have a ton in common with a certain generation.
You just nailed it exactly. What is the commonality other than that we're in the event industry together? What is the commonality?
And I don't think it's about leaning into the commonality. I think it's about leaning into the differentials and how those differentials can better your life. The boomers in our industry, and as an Xer, I think I'm uniquely poised, and the Gen Xers are uniquely poised because we were that weird generation that had the teachings of the boomers, like work hard and pay your dues, and like these very sort of standard boomer call to arms in regards to the workplace. But then we also had the very tip of technology coming into play, because that's the benchmark for this divide. If you're really looking at this from a societal standpoint, it's about technology, and it's about the fear of technology.
Okay, but I've got to first jump in right there.
Yeah.
So my daughter just turned 28.
Sure.
And when she was, 7, 8, I remember new technologies would come out, whether it's video games or a different form of a computer. She would jump in. She would not look at any
instructional manuals.
Right. No, that's what I was going to say. Right. Whereas me, as soon as I get the first thing, like if I get something for her birthday and I'm going to help her with it, I'm opening up and she's just jumping in with it. She actually taught me to just go for it.
And there you have it. And that's what I'm saying, lean into the differentials. Because look, I love to write notes on pen and paper.
Yeah, I still do.
I write all my notes with pen and paper.
Yeah.
I it's just how I process information, because that's how I learned to take notes in grammar school.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I like Word as a program.
Yeah.
I love Word. Yay, Word. Word is a great program.
I've embraced notes, but I have to admit I'm still doing some Word.
Right.
Still am.
Well, my the millennials and the Zoomers on our team during COVID were like, okay, we've got the time. We are overhauling our internal system at David Beahm. We're going to G Suite. We're getting everything in Google, and we're going to work remotely in the most effective way we can. Now, I'm here to tell you that I wanted to crawl under a rock
from
that idea.
Some resistance.
Just the idea of it made me want to crawl under a rock.
Yeah.
I am so grateful to the millennials and the Zoomers on my team for pushing us to do that, because it has made our working environment that much better. It has made our collaboration that much better. Right now, I'll use yesterday as an example. David is in Connecticut. I'm in Manhattan, and our creative director is in London.
Right.
And we all had a 2-hour meeting yesterday where we were working in shared documents in real time, collaborating. And that would not have been possible without the foresight and the outside of the box thinking and the new technology knowledge of my millennials and my Zoomers. It requires trust. It requires bravery of the Xers and the Boomers, but the benefits are tenfold. Now, that also works in reverse. The Xers and the Boomers of our generation have such a robust knowledge of how this industry works and the cyclical nature of this industry. How many times we have all, and you know, Andy, like how many times have we been on the upside of swing and then on the bottom, whether it's COVID or the recession. Or, the market going to hell in 2008.
This is an interesting point, because when the pandemic hit, I mean, it was really rough, but I had been through the recession of 2008.
I've been there, right? Yeah. So how do you had a skill set that 2 whole generations had never been through before.
I didn't freak out to the extent some others.
And how could they have tapped into your knowledge? And that's what I'm saying is we are, by isolating ourselves within our generational bubbles, we think we're being stronger. We think we're rallying together. But actually the stronger move is to reach out, is to branch out, is to get the advice, is to get the new ideas. And that's really what that article that you mentioned at the top of the interview was all about, is like, I'm an Xer, so I'm in a unique position to see both sides of this equation.
That's right. You're in the middle.
I'm right. I'm dead in the middle.
Well, and David is a Boomer, and your friends, you've got friends who are millennials and Zoomers. And,
exactly. And there's a richness there that we are ignoring to our detriment.
I want to make sure that you're aware of 2 other shows that are on the Wedding Biz Network. First, The Business of Being Creative, hosted by founder and president of The Business of Being Creative, Sean Lowe. Sean's consulting firm is focused on providing practical advice to those in the business of being creative. Tune in every Tuesday to hear a new episode chock full of topics and advice for creative businesses. Also, check out the 2 seasons of Stop and Smell the Roses, hosted by the one and only lifestyle and event design expert, Preston Bailey. Preston speaks with such an honest voice. I know you're going to thoroughly enjoy hearing him on this unique platform. You can find both shows at theweddingbiznetwork.com or on your cell phone's podcast app for both The Business of Being Creative and Stop and Smell the Roses. Moving forward, what are some specific ideas that people can do in order to bridge this divide?
Yeah, I think we are all so slammed right now with business. Blessedly. Thank you. The industry is back. People are increasing their staff. Hire multi-generationally. Hire people who are in every single bracket, so that as you are creating communities within your offices, within your corporate environment, you're creating multi-generational communities that can feed each other and self-sustain and create the most optimal company that you can. I think that is the first thing. I think the second thing is, within Blue Zones, we were at the start of this conversation, I said, one of the things was a shared faith, right? That's what makes Blue Zones so the longevity is like, okay, well, all these people practice the same religion. They all are in the same faith. There's a way to do that within corporations, and that is ethos. What is the what is the ethos of your business? What are you fighting for? Let's all be of a shared mind. Let's be of a hive mind that we're all fighting for the same goal. The ethos is all the same, but all these generations come at it from a different perspective.
I think we're all so busy focused, we forget to discuss that, to talk it out, and that's critical.
Yeah. I think the basic, like, who is your ideal client? Is that, that's the generational thing comes in there too. Is your ideal client? For those of us in the wedding market, our ideal clients at this point are millennials for the most part.
Well, and let's not forget that the parents are
paying.
Yeah, and they tend to be the boomers or
the Xers.
Yeah, the Xers, right.
So how are we talking to these different, these different parts of the wedding family, of the client, as a global word, if you will, the client being the family? How are you appealing to those different sides? How do you make yourself? Because when we have a wedding client come in, very often it's the mom, the dad, the bride, the groom, maybe a sibling,
right?
Maybe, and they all have to like you. Yeah. So when we sit in a meeting with a client, there's oftentimes multiple generations on our side.
I was going to say, right.
That can speak the lingo and talk the talk with each different group. But if your company is all comprised of Xers and a Zoomer couple comes in, how do you tie it in?
On this podcast, I've interviewed plenty of planners and designers who are older, who are meeting by themselves. Then they bring in their team. And then I've also had other people who have even mother-daughter teams, that kind of a thing, you know, or like you're talking about with you and David, you've got the different generations. And so you're able to, you can relate with the kids more and he can relate more. Not that you don't, cross over, but he can relate more with the parents. And so you've got it all covered.
Well, and the first person that somebody talks to when they call our office is a Zoomer, is Katie. And very often it is the brides and the grooms that are calling first.
Now it is. It used to be the bride's mother, and now it is the couple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you have a Zoomer or millennial fielding that first inquiry, and they feel heard, and they feel seen, and they feel represented. And it really is that level of age diversity across a corporate environment and a corporate culture that I think yields the best product. Even in design, I think that's what an interesting part of this, when we sit around a table and we're designing some, it's a very collaborative conversation. Yeah, David and Ryan are carrying the torch, they're the creatives, but we are all bringing our own story, perspective, background, interests, popular discussion, what's hot to the table. And all of us have different perspectives on what that is.
I love all of this. I mean, that makes perfect sense, especially when you're meeting with the clients. But even going back to what you said earlier about hiring multi-generational people for the company, because people now, I see it. They're tending to just really bring in, when they need to fill a seat, they're bringing in younger people, but to still, like you say, to keep that mix and purposefully. Yeah. And people are thinking they could save money too with younger people. No, it's an investment.
It is 100% an investment. I mean, let's just use round numbers. If it's $100,000 salary, you're however long it takes you to ramp up that person, that's your investment. So if it takes 6 months, guess what? That's a $50,000 investment.
Right.
And that needs to be part of the hiring.
Ooh, that's interesting too.
Process.
The onboarding process you're talking about.
Because it really is a corporate investment. And look, here's what I want to say about that. I came to David hot out of college. It was a great investment for him, if I do say so myself.
Oh, it is.
but take me out of it. So many of our team members and we have very low turnover. So many of our team members came to us fresh out of their education stage. And there really isn't, I think you would agree, there really isn't a proper training ground for what we do.
Oh God, no.
It's jump into the deep end.
Well, there's
and
the Wedding
swim.
Biz podcast.
But yes.
How dare you?
But there's no top school for event planning and production in the world, You get into the deep end and you start swimming.
Yeah.
And I have been so impressed and so amazed with how quickly, at least the millennials and the Zoomers on our team, have learned and made us all better because of their presence. It matters. It really, representation, not only from a diversity standpoint, a cultural diversity standpoint matters, but it matters in age too.
Oh yeah, it does.
It really, really does.
Yeah. Well, God, Christina, I mean, this has been incredible getting into this. And if people want to check out the article, it was in the spring, I know, but how can they find it?
Yeah, you can find it on the specialevents.com in the spring 2022 issue. It was in a portion of the magazine called The Last Word.
In The Last Word, it's X marks the spot, a forgotten generation's plea to the hospitality industry. Before we go, is there any other points you want to make?
Just that I'm so proud of our industry right now and the resurgence we're making. And I encourage people to reach out to share not only the good, because I think in the Instagram world, in the Facebook world, we love to put out our wins.
Oh yeah, it's nothing but all the good stuff.
It's all the wins. It's all the wins.
I know.
And that's amazing. And there are some huge wins. But part of how we cultivate this dialogue across generations is that we share the bad with the good. And we reach out when we need help. And we reach out when we're stumped. And I encourage your listeners and I encourage our community to really think about who's the best person to reach out. Maybe it's someone older.
Yeah.
Maybe it's someone younger. Maybe it's not someone in my immediate circle. Open up your circle, open it up, make it a crescent, not a circle. Open it up to a new idea, a new perspective, a new thought
and I want to say
process.
Also, don't be afraid to reach out to people. I know that if you just reach out in a kind, gentle way, hey, if you happen to have time, I'm so-and-so, here's what I do. I know you've had all this experience in the industry or the opposite, reach out. I find people are if they're approached in a nice way, people want to talk. They want to help.
Yeah. And our industry is so unique. I think one of the most inspiring things that I occasionally get to do is people who are coming out of their educational years and are looking to get into the workforce. I've had a lot of people reach out and be like, can I just have an educational interview with you? Can I just pick your brain about what it's like to work in this industry?
Right.
Take the time to do it.
Yeah, just
take the time to see what their perspectives are. I can promise you, as the person who's supposed to be being the one who's interviewed, you get a lot out of it on the other end.
Seriously.
You really do.
I know.
You really do. And so let's do what we do best. Let's mingle. I mean, we're party people. Can we mingle?
Well, It's been great to mingle with you here today.
Thank you.
Christina,
Thank
seriously,
you.
I want to keep periodically having you on because you always have so much good stuff to share and to say. And so before we go, if people want to have you speak, because I know you're now doing keynotes, you're doing a lot of speaking, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Well, Instagram, of course, that's a great way to reach me.
What's your personal?
Tucci Mama, TEUCCIMAMA.
I love that.
And that's also my website, Tucci Mama. And I'm now going as the professional provocatrice.
Ooh, very cool.
So I like to provoke. I like to provoke dialogue, conversation. I like to make people think. And yeah, that's where you can reach out to me for both speaking engagements, of which I'm available, and I do workshops and keynotes, but also for coaching and mentorship. So please don't hesitate. Reach out.
See,
I'm around.
Invitation's open.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you, Christina. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Christina Matteucci. Be sure to check out the website of davidbeahm.com. Again, that's davidbeahm.com. On social media, you can find Christina at Tucci Mama. That's TEUCCIMAMA. And be sure to check out the show notes in your cell phone's podcast app or at our website of theweddingbiz.com. Next week's guest is a very popular destination planner who's been on the show several times, and that's Michelle Rago. She does not disappoint. Be sure to tune in next week. And if you haven't subscribed to The Wedding Biz on your podcast app on your cell phone, please do it so that you find out whenever a new episode drops. And also follow The Wedding Biz, particularly on Instagram at The Wedding Biz. And we'll catch you next week with another interview.